When I first learned the truth, I did not scream. I did not argue. I did not cry. I just sat there, very still, like a photograph someone forgot to move. And I remember thinking, if this is a dream, please let me wake up before I open my mouth and say anything. But it was not a dream. It was a truth that waited 20 years to find me. And when it did, it arrived softly and quietly, almost politely. Isn't it strange how life can break your heart without raising its voice? I grew up believing I knew who I was. I believed my family was like a simple drawing a child makes, three figures holding hands under a warm sun, a mother, a father, and me. I believed that my father's hands, rough and warm, were the same hands that held me when I first cried. I believed that the soft kiss he placed on my forehead each night carried the same love he had the day I was born. I believed that we shared blood, not just memories. But life has a way of placing certain truths in locked boxes. Boxes you were not meant to open until the right, or maybe the wrong, moment arrives. I never imagined my box would open on a rainy evening when the world felt peaceful and everything seemed normal. It was the kind of rain that makes roads shine and windows blur, the kind of evening when families gather around their tables, talking in soft voices, passing bread and warm dishes. I remember sitting in my room, writing a simple letter I planned to give my dad for his birthday. It wasn't anything grand, just a letter about love, about gratitude, about the small things he did that shaped who I became. I wanted to tell him that his quiet presence made me feel safe, that the way he listened made me feel important, that the way he supported me made me feel strong, even on days I wanted to hide from the world. But as I wrote those words, something inside me shifted. A small, strange thought crossed my mind, like a cloud passing in front of the sun. Why do I not look like him at all? It wasn't the first time the thought visited me, but it was the first time I stopped writing, lifted my eyes, and let the thought stay. You see, my father has dark brown eyes. Mine are light. He has a strong, wide nose, the kind people say looks distinguished. Mine is soft and narrow. His hair is thick, deep black. Mine is finer and several shades lighter. People often joked about it when I was younger. Maybe you look like your mother's distant relatives, they said, or you'll grow into your features, just wait. I believed them because why wouldn't I? Children do not question the stories they are given. They accept love as truth and truth as love. But that night, something tugged at me. Something old, something quiet, something I must have ignored 100 times before. My mother was in the kitchen washing dishes. My father was sitting on the veranda, sipping tea the way he always did, slowly, patiently, as if the world would wait for him. I looked at him from the window. His figure was calm, the soft light touching the side of his face. He looked peaceful, beautiful even, and the way only good people can be. And maybe that was the first moment, before I knew the truth, when I felt a small ache in my chest, a strange, trembling ache, because suddenly I wondered, what if this man, this gentle soul, is not the person I think he is? The thought frightened me. It felt disrespectful, unfair, wrong. So I shook it away. I closed my notebook. I told myself I was being silly, and I walked downstairs to sit with him. He looked up at me and smiled, a slow, warm smile that always made me feel like nothing bad could touch me as long as he was around. He asked me, "Long day?" I said, "A little," even though the day had been perfectly normal. He tapped the chair beside me. I sat down. We didn't speak for a while. We didn't need to. Silence with him was never uncomfortable. It was like sitting inside a safe room made of trust. The rain fell softly. The smell of wet earth filled the air. And for a moment, everything was perfect. But sometimes perfect moments are the ones life chooses to break first. Later that night, after he went to sleep, I passed by my parents' room. The door was slightly open and I heard my mother's voice, soft, trembling, something between a whisper and a sigh. "He deserves to know," she said. My breath caught. I froze. "He's grown now," she continued. "He will understand." I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what no meant. But my heart began to beat faster, like it was afraid of something it couldn't see. My father responded in a tone I had rarely heard before, a tone filled with fear. "No," he said, "not yet. Let me have a little more time with him." With him. My stomach tightened. A strange, uncomfortable heat spread across my chest. My mother sighed. "Time won't change the truth." I don't remember walking back to my room. I only remember sitting on my bed, staring at my hands, trying to understand why those words felt like they were about me. Something inside me whispered, "This is about you." Another voice whispered, "Don't assume." And somewhere between those two voices, silence grew. That night, I barely slept. I kept hearing my father's words. Let me have a little more time with him. What did that mean? Why would he say something like that? What truth did time not change? Morning came with a pale light, the kind of quiet morning where even the birds sound tired. My mother called me for breakfast. My father sat at the table, reading the newspaper. Everything looked normal, but I felt different. I kept watching him. The way he held the cup, the way he looked up and smiled gently, the way he asked me if I slept well. He had no idea that his whisper from the night before had reached me. He had no idea that my heart had begun to tremble around him. I answered him softly, "I'm okay." And I was, at least on the outside. Inside, a small storm had begun to rise. I didn't know it then, but that night's whisper would lead me down a path that would change everything: my identity, my memories, my trust, and the way I understood love itself. Because sometimes the truth arrives quietly, but its echo lasts a lifetime. And sometimes the person you love most in the world carries a secret they never wanted you to bear. A secret they protected not to deceive you, but to keep your heart whole. This is the story of how I learned that the man who raised me, the man who held me, guided me, encouraged me, and loved me for 20 years was not the man who gave me life, but he was the man who gave me everything else. And this is how I found out. I think to understand what happened later, you need to know what my life was like before the truth came. You need to know the quiet, simple world I grew up in. Because only then can you understand how deeply everything changed. My childhood was not perfect, but it was warm. It was slow and gentle, like a soft morning that never rushed you. Our home was small, but it always felt full. Full of smells, full of sounds, full of love. My mother loved plants. We had green pots everywhere, on the windowsills, the balcony, the steps outside the door. Sometimes she'd talk to them while watering them. I used to tease her and say, "Do they talk back?" She always smiled and said, "They listen." My father, he was the kind of man people admire without noise. He did not need attention. He did not need praise. He was steady, consistent, present. You could count on him for anything. If something broke, he fixed it. If someone cried, he listened. If I stumbled, he offered his hand without a single word of judgment. He wasn't my hero in a dramatic way. He was my hero in a quiet way, the way only a good man can be. When I was little, he used to walk me to school. I remember his hand holding mine as we crossed the road. His hand was big, strong, warm, the kind of hand that made the world seem less frightening. Sometimes he bought me small snacks from a street vendor. He always said, "Don't tell your mother." But when we got home, my mother always smelled it right away and said, "You two are terrible liars." Then we all laughed. In those moments, life felt whole, complete, like nothing could ever break the harmony between us. He taught me small lessons without ever raising his voice. "Be patient," he said once when I cried because I couldn't tie my shoelaces. "Everything comes together with time." I think about that sentence now, and I wonder if he meant it for more than shoelaces. He taught me how to ride a bicycle, how to sharpen a pencil with a small knife, how to tie a proper knot, how to treat people gently, how to listen before speaking, how to breathe when life hurts. He taught me things I carry even now. Sometimes I wonder, does blood matter more than this? Back then, of course, I never questioned him. Why would I? A child accepts love as truth. I accepted him as my father the way I accepted the sky is blue and the ground is solid. He was there, every day, in every chapter of my life. When I got my first cold, he stayed awake the whole night. When I failed my first math exam, he didn't scold me. He helped me study. When I broke my arm falling from a tree, he carried me all the way to the clinic, whispering, "You're okay, I'm here." When I entered my teenage years, our relationship didn't fade the way people say it often does. He wasn't just my father. He was my friend, my safe place. Sometimes we sat on the rooftop at night. He liked looking at the stars. He told me stories, simple stories from his childhood, nothing dramatic. Stories about climbing trees, swimming in the river, losing a shoe in the mud, running away from a neighbor's angry rooster. His stories made me smile. They made me feel connected to him, like our hearts shared the same rhythm. As I grew older, I became busier with school and friends, but he never complained. He always waited for me the same gentle patience. He was proud of me. He told me often. His eyes shined in a special way whenever I achieved something, even something small. Looking back now, I realize he looked at me with more than pride. He looked at me with gratitude, as if my presence in his life was a blessing he didn't think he deserved. Back then, of course, I didn't understand that look. Now, I do. My mother, on the other hand, was different. She loved me, yes, but she carried a kind of heaviness in her eyes, something she tried to hide, something like a shadow. She was warm, but guarded, kind, but always thinking. Her love felt real, but sometimes a little distant, like she loved me from a place behind a window. When I was younger, I thought perhaps that was just her nature. But now that I think back, I wonder if she carried guilt long before I ever knew there was something to feel guilty about. She and my father rarely argued. Their life together looked peaceful. But sometimes, when she thought no one was watching, she looked at him with sorrow. A deep, silent sorrow. It was the kind of look that said, I wish things were different. The kind of look that said, I'm sorry for something I can't undo. I was too young to understand it then, but now that I know what I know, her expression makes sense. As I entered my late teens, I started noticing things I didn't notice before. For example, relatives sometimes made odd comments. He looks different, doesn't he? Or, he has such unusual features for your family. My parents always laughed it off. He takes after his grandmother, my mother said. Genes are funny, my father added. Those explanations satisfied me. I trusted them. But as the years passed, tiny questions began to sit quietly in the back of my mind. Questions like, why is there not a single childhood photo of my parents holding me in the hospital? Why did no one ever tell me stories about my birth? Why do family members avoid talking about the time before I was born? I didn't ask those questions out loud. They didn't feel important. Life was simple. Life was warm. Why disturb it? But life has its own timing and its own way of bringing hidden things into the light. As I neared my 20s, I noticed something else. My parents had become more protective of certain topics. Whenever I asked about old relatives or our family history, they changed the subject. When I mentioned wanting to learn more about our ancestry for a school project, my mother said too quickly, "There's nothing interesting there. Choose another topic." My father avoided my eyes. It was one of the very few times I saw him uncomfortable. I brushed it off, but deep inside, a small part of me wondered what they were trying to hide. Still, I trusted them. I loved them. And in my heart, they were my parents, no question. Which is why the night I overheard them whispering felt like the ground shifting beneath my feet. After that night, something inside me became alert. I tried to behave normally, but my mind was no longer peaceful. I watched them more closely. I listened more carefully. I waited for clues, even though I told myself I didn't want them. My father noticed my quietness. One evening, he asked, "Is everything okay?" I looked at him and forced a small smile. Yes. But inside, my heart whispered something else. If I ask him the truth, will he tell me? I didn't want to ask. I didn't want to see his face change. I didn't want to hurt him. And I didn't want to lose the image of him I carried for 20 years. So I waited. I stayed silent. I hoped the feeling would go away. But the universe has a strange way of pushing the truth forward, especially when you try to avoid it. A few days later, something happened that I now believe was not an accident. We were cleaning the storage room together. Old books, worn-out shoes, boxes of childhood drawings, broken toys, school medals, everything was scattered around us. My father opened a large wooden box I'd never seen before. Inside were old clothes, a few letters,
and a sealed brown envelope.
He looked at the envelope for a long moment. His face changed in a way I had never seen before. Not fear, not sadness, something like resignation. I asked, "What's that?" He didn't answer at first. He just held it, his fingers tightening around the edges. Then he looked at me with eyes that seemed older than they were. "Some things," he said softly, "are better left inside the box." He placed the envelope back, but his voice trembled. That tremble settled deep inside me like a seed of suspicion, a seed of truth waiting to grow. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the envelope, about the whisper I heard days earlier, about the look in my father's eyes. I felt something coming, like a wave far out in the ocean, quiet but unstoppable. I didn't know it yet, but the wave would reach me soon. And when it did, everything I believed about myself would change. Everything. This is the part of the story where the world is still standing right before it begins to shake. The days after I saw that envelope were heavy. They felt like walking with a small stone in my shoe, not painful enough to make me stop, but uncomfortable enough that I couldn't forget it was there. I tried to act normal. I tried to laugh with my father the way I always did. I tried to sit beside him while he drank tea. I tried to listen to his quiet stories. But something had changed inside me. There was a slight distance now. Not ones he created, ones I created without meaning to. A distance made of questions I was afraid to ask and answers I was afraid to hear. I started paying attention to things I had ignored before. The photos in our living room. The old albums my mother kept locked in a drawer. The way my father reacted whenever I asked about the past. The way my mother's hands shook when she held old family documents. And then, there were the physical differences. I had noticed them before, but now they stood out sharply. His strong jawline. Mine, softer one. His deep brown eyes. Mine, light ones. His skin tone, warm and dark. Mine, much lighter. People always said I took after my mother, and I did, in many ways. But some features didn't match either of them. Features I never questioned before, now demanded answers. One evening, after dinner, I watched my parents from the doorway. They were washing dishes together. My father was humming softly the way he always did. My mother smiled at him, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Her eyes held guilt. That was when something inside me whispered, "They are hiding something from you. And they have been hiding it for a long time." The whisper grew louder each day. They felt like walking with a small stone in my shoe, not painful enough to make me stop, but uncomfortable enough that I couldn't forget it was there. I tried to act normal. I tried to laugh with my father the way I always did. I tried to sit beside him while he drank tea. I tried to listen to his quiet stories. But something had changed inside me. There was a slight distance now. Not ones he created, ones I created without meaning to. A distance made of questions I was afraid to ask and answers I was afraid to hear. I started paying attention to things I had ignored before. The photos in our living room, the old albums my mother kept locked in a drawer, the way my father reacted whenever I asked about the past, the way my mother's hands shook when she held old family documents. And then there were the physical differences. I had noticed them before, but now they stood out sharply. His strong jawline, my softer one. His deep brown eyes, my light ones. His skin tone warm and dark, mine much lighter. People always said I took after my mother, and I did, in many ways. But some features didn't match either of them. Features I never questioned before now demanded answers. One evening after dinner, I watched my parents from the doorway. They were washing dishes together. My father was humming softly the way he always did. My mother smiled at him, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Her eyes held guilt. That was when something inside me whispered, "They are hiding something from you, and they have been hiding it for a long time." The whisper grew louder each day. Around that time, my college announced an optional ancestry DNA research project for our genetics class. It was simple. Students could volunteer to submit a DNA sample to learn about their roots. I didn't think much of it at first, but when I brought the brochure home, my mother's face went pale. She didn't even read it. She just said, too quickly, "You do not need to participate." My father's hand stopped in midair. He stared at her, not me. That reaction told me everything I needed to know. Something was wrong. Something was being protected. That night, I sat in my room staring at the brochure. My hands trembled a little. A simple test, a simple sample, a simple answer. But for me, that answer might break something. I didn't sign up for the test. Not yet. I wasn't ready. But the idea took root inside me. The next shift came from something small, a question I asked without thinking. My father and I were sitting outside one evening. The sky was turning orange, the kind of sunset that paints everything softly. I looked at him and asked, "What was I like when I was born?" He froze. Only for a second, but I saw it. A moment of panic hidden behind his calm face. He cleared his throat. He said, "You were small, very small." "And?" I asked, smiling a little, trying to make it light. He looked away. "We were happy, very happy." Something about the way he said "we" made my heart ache, as if he was carefully choosing words that wouldn't reveal too much. I asked another question. "What hospital was it?" My father's eyes softened in a way that told me he was about to lie. He whispered, "A small one. I don't remember the name." He remembered everything. He remembered dates, names, small details from decades ago. But he didn't remember the hospital where his only child was born? The air between us grew heavy. Quiet. Lonely. I didn't push further.
I just sat there with him, pretending everything was fine. But later that night, I cried quietly into my pillow. Not because I knew the truth, but because I felt like the truth was coming, and it scared me more than anything. I wasn't afraid that he wasn't my father. I was afraid of how much it would hurt him when he found out. I loved him. I still do, more than words can carry. And deep inside, I already feared that the truth would break him more than it would break me. Then came the day everything started to unravel. It was a Sunday afternoon, a peaceful day. My mother was baking something in the kitchen. My father was fixing a loose cabinet hinge. I went to the storage room to look for an old notebook, but instead, I found the wooden box again. This time, the envelope was not inside the box. It was placed beside it, as if someone had removed it or planned to.
My heart began to beat faster. I shouldn't open it. I knew that. It wasn't mine. And if my father found out, it would hurt him. But something stronger than fear pushed me forward. A quiet voice inside me said, "You already know something is wrong. Don't pretend anymore." My hand reached for the envelope. It was light, but felt heavy in my hand. My fingers trembled. I sat on the floor. I stared at it for a long time. A single line was written on the front. "For him, when the time is right." Not my name, but I knew who it was meant for. My throat dried. My hands grew cold. I opened the envelope. Inside were documents, old ones, folded ones, a birth certificate, a hospital bracelet, a small photograph. The first thing I saw was the hospital name, a different one from what my parents always mentioned. Then I saw the date. Correct. Then I saw the names. My mother's name, but not my father's. My father's name was missing. Another man's name was written instead, a man I had never heard of. My vision blurred for a moment. I blinked hard. My hands shook. I kept telling myself, this is a misunderstanding. Maybe it's another baby. Maybe it's an old document. Maybe. But then I saw something that ended all my maybes. The photograph. A small newborn wrapped in a white blanket. My mother holding me. A man beside her. But it wasn't the man who raised me. It wasn't my father. It was someone else. Someone with lighter eyes. Someone I vaguely resembled. My breath became unsteady. A wave of heat rushed through my body, then cold, then numbness. I stared at the photo again and again, hoping it would change. It didn't. I felt something inside me crack, a quiet break, a soft shatter. My heart didn't explode, it didn't scream, it just broke silently. And then I realized something even more painful. My father must have known. All these years, he must have known. And he loved me anyway, not out of obligation, not out of blood. He loved me by choice. That thought made my chest hurt. Tears fell onto the paper. I wiped them quickly, afraid of ruining the documents. I wasn't angry. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't even confused. I was simply heartbroken. Heartbroken for him, heartbroken for my mother, heartbroken for myself. I put everything back into the envelope,
hands trembling. Then I heard footsteps. I looked up and saw my father standing in the doorway. He wasn't angry. He wasn't surprised. He just looked sad, deeply, painfully sad. His eyes went to the envelope in my hands, then to my face. He didn't speak at first. Then he sat down slowly beside me. He didn't try to take the envelope away. He didn't yell. He didn't ask why I opened it. He just placed his hand gently on my back, a familiar, comforting gesture I had known since childhood. But this time, it broke me even more. His voice was soft. He whispered, "I hoped you wouldn't find out like this." My throat tightened. I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. I looked at him. His eyes were filled with sorrow, but also love. So much love, it made my chest ache. He took a long breath. He said, "I wanted to tell you one day, when you were ready, when I was ready." My voice trembled. "Who is he?" My father didn't look away. "He is your biological father." The words hung in the air like heavy stones, but his tone was calm, gentle, full of quiet pain. I looked down at the photograph again. The man beside my mother, the man whose face I shared. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered. He took a slow breath. "Because I thought, if you knew, you might stop seeing me as your father." Those words, those soft, trembling words, they cut deeper than the truth itself. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. He reached out slowly, carefully, as if afraid I would pull away. He wiped my tear with the back of his finger, a gesture he had done 100 times when I was little. And something inside me broke open. I cried quietly, not loud, not angry, just softly, the way a heart cries when it doesn't know how to hold the weight of truth. He didn't say anything, he just held my hand. When I finally spoke, my voice was barely a whisper. "Why did he leave?" My father lowered his eyes. He said, "He didn't leave. He passed away before you were born." A wave of emotion washed over me. Grief for a man I never knew, sadness for a history I never lived, loneliness for a truth I never imagined. My father continued, "Your mother was alone, broken, and I loved her. I loved you. I wanted to take care of both of you." He looked at me with the trembling smile. "I wasn't there at the beginning, but I wanted to be there for everything else." My hands covered my face. Tears streamed through my fingers. All the small moments of my life, all the times he held me, supported me, guided me, suddenly felt even more precious, because now I knew they came from choice, not obligation. After a long, quiet moment, I lowered my hands. My face was wet, my heart felt heavy but full. I looked at him, truly looked at him. He wasn't my father by blood, but he was the man who raised me, the man who protected me, the man who gave me love every day for 20 years. He was my father in every way that mattered. But the truth had only begun to unfold. There was more to the story, more than I knew, more than I could understand in that moment. And the hardest part, the truth that would shake me the most, was still
Waiting.
Because knowing who my biological father was only the beginning. Understanding why everything was hidden, that was the real storm coming. For the next few days, the house felt different. Not colder, not angry, just heavier. Like all three of us were suddenly walking through the same deep water, each trying not to drown the others. My father went back to his quiet routines, but I could see the worry in his eyes every time he looked at me. My mother spoke less, cooked less, smiled less. Even the plants in her window seemed to feel the tension. And I walked through the house like a guest who didn't know where to sit anymore. Nothing looked different, but everything felt different. Every memory felt heavier now. Every moment from my childhood seemed to whisper a new meaning. I would look at my father making tea, and instead of just seeing warmth, I saw love mixed with fear. Fear that one day I would learn the truth and walk away from him. I would look at my mother, and instead of seeing tiredness, I saw guilt. A guilt that had lived inside her long before I ever touched that envelope. A few times I caught her looking at me when she thought I wasn't watching. She didn't look angry or defensive. She looked terrified. Not terrified of me, but terrified for me. Terrified of what this truth might do to my heart. And that fear told me there was still more I didn't know. One evening, I asked them to sit with me. They both came quietly. My father sat on the left side of the sofa. My mother sat on the right. I sat in the old chair across from them, the same place I used to sit as a child when I wanted to share something important. My hands trembled a little. My heart beat softly but quickly, like it knew what was coming before I did. I looked at both of them and said, "I want to know everything." My father's expression tightened. My mother lowered her eyes. I spoke again slowly, so my voice wouldn't shake. "I'm not angry. I'm not here to blame anyone. I just want to understand." My father nodded gently. He looked at my mother. She closed her eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and opened them again. Then she began.
My mother's story came out in soft pieces. "Your biological father's name was Omar," she said quietly. "He was a kind man, a gentle man. We planned to build a life together." The name felt strange in my ears, distant, like a word from a story I had never heard before. My father sat still. He didn't interrupt. He didn't look away. My mother continued. "We were engaged. He was excited about being a father. He talked about you all the time. He was the kind of man who would have loved you with his whole heart." Her voice broke a little. I swallowed. My chest felt tight. "What happened to him?" I asked softly. She held her hands together. Her fingers trembled slightly. "He had an accident," she whispered. "He passed away before you were born. I was 6 months pregnant." The room went very quiet. Even the air felt still. I lowered my eyes. A man I never met, a man whose features I carried, was gone before he ever saw me. My mother wiped a tear and continued. "I was lost. I was alone. I didn't know how to raise a baby by myself. My family didn't understand. Some blamed me for loving him." Her voice shook now. "For months, I couldn't breathe properly. I couldn't sleep. I was afraid of giving birth. afraid of raising a child who would look like a man I had loved and lost. She wiped her eyes with trembling fingers. And then she looked at my father. He came. My father stared down at his hands. He? I repeated softly, even though I knew she meant him. Yes, she whispered. He. Then it was my father's turn to speak. I knew your mother before, he said quietly. We were friends. Not close, just familiar. We spoke sometimes. I always thought she deserved happiness. He looked at my mother with a gentle sadness. When her fiancé passed away, she broke. I saw her suffering. I saw her alone. I couldn't pretend not to. He paused, trying to steady himself. So I helped. First with small things. Groceries, rides, errands. Then with doctor's visits. Then with preparing for the baby. He looked into my eyes then, a soft, deep look I will never forget. When you were born, and she placed you in my arms, I felt something I could not explain. I felt like I had been waiting for you my whole life. My breath caught. He swallowed, and tears filled his eyes. Your mother didn't ask me to be your father. I asked her to let me. My mother covered her mouth, tears running down her face. My father continued, voice trembling. I knew you weren't my blood. I knew some people would talk. I knew you might question it one day. But I also knew I loved you from the moment I held you. I felt my throat tighten. My eyes stung. My father looked down, his voice almost breaking. I gave you my name. I brought you home. I promised myself that you would never feel the absence of the man who wasn't here to raise you. He wiped a tear he tried to hide. And I kept that promise every day. Then came the part that changed everything. My father hesitated. My mother looked at him anxiously. I noticed something unspoken between them, something heavier than what they had already told me. I asked softly, "What else is there?" My mother looked at my father. He looked at her. Then he looked at me and spoke in a voice that felt like it carried 20 years of pain. You were never supposed to find out, he said gently. Not because we wanted to deceive you, but because there is more to the story. My heart sank. What more? He hesitated. Then he whispered something I was not prepared for. Omar, your biological father, did not want his family to know he had a child. My breath stopped. What do you mean? My father spoke very slowly. He came from a family that disapproved of your mother. They didn't accept their relationship. They didn't believe it was appropriate. My mother nodded painfully. They thought I wasn't good enough, she said, that I didn't come from a family equal to theirs. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. My father continued. When he passed away, his family wanted nothing to do with your mother. They didn't offer help. They didn't ask about the baby. They didn't care. I felt something sharp twist inside me. Anger, sadness, confusion. Did they even know I existed? I whispered. My mother hesitated. Yes, she said. They knew. And they didn't want me? She closed her eyes tightly, as if the truth itself hurt her. They didn't want any reminder of your father, she whispered. I felt my heart shatter in a quiet way. Not loudly, not dramatically, just softly, painfully, like paper tearing in slow motion. I wasn't unwanted by my father, but I was unwanted by his family. A family I never met, a family that knew about me and chose to erase me. I didn't realize I was crying until my father reached out and held my hand. "You were never unwanted," he said firmly. "Not for a single second. Not in this house." I wiped my face, trying to breathe through the ache. My mother whispered, "I hid the truth not to protect myself, but to protect you." Then she added something softer. "And to protect him." She looked at my father. "If anyone had known you weren't his biological child, people would have judged him too. They would have said he was foolish to raise another man's son. They would have said he wasn't enough of a man." My father sighed, eyes full of old wounds. "Yes," he whispered, "but I didn't care." He looked at me again. "I only cared that you were mine." Something broke inside me. Years of questions, years of tiny insecurities I didn't know I had, years of wondering why I looked different. Now I knew. I took a long breath. "I don't blame either of you," I said softly. "I just wish you had trusted me sooner." My mother cried harder. My father looked away. But then he turned back to me and said, "We didn't hide the truth because we didn't trust you. We hid it because we were afraid that knowing it might take you away from us." My heart clenched. I whispered, "How could I ever leave you?" He smiled, a sad, grateful smile. "Because blood is powerful," he said quietly, "and fear makes people doubt what they truly mean to each other." But the turning point wasn't just this truth. The real turning point came with the truth I told myself. The real turning point came with the decision I made next, a decision that would change everything again. Because I needed to know the whole truth. Not just who he was, not just what happened. I needed to know his family. The family that rejected me. The family that erased me. The family that knew I existed and chose to erase me. And so, I made a choice. A choice that would take me down a road filled with answers and new wounds. A road that would test my heart in ways I never expected. A road that began the moment I whispered, "I want to meet his family."
When I finally said the words, "I want to meet his family," the room froze. My mother gasped softly. My father looked down at the floor. It felt like the air itself held its breath. I didn't say it out of anger. I didn't say it to punish anyone. I said it because something deep inside me needed to understand the pieces of my life that had been kept in the dark. My biological father had loved me, but his family had erased me. I needed to look that truth in the face. I needed closure, but I had no idea how heavy that decision would become. The days after. My mother cried the moment I said it, but she didn't try to stop me. My father didn't argue either. They just looked at each other with worry. Worry for my heart. For the next 2 days, the house moved gently around the topic, like we were all afraid to speak too loudly in case the truth woke up again. I spent hours holding the letter from Omar, reading it again and again until the words felt engraved into my heartbeat. Each time I read it, my love for him grew, but so did the ache. A man who wanted me so deeply
had a family who wanted nothing to do with me. It didn't make sense. It didn't feel fair. My father noticed the storm forming inside me. One evening, while I was sitting at the kitchen table, he walked in quietly and placed a small piece of paper in front of me. An address. "This is where they live now," he said softly. "I didn't want to hide it. If you're going, you shouldn't go alone." I looked up at him. His eyes were gentle. "I'll come with you," he said. My throat tightened. My father, the man who raised me, was willing to walk into the home of the family who once rejected me. I whispered, "Are you sure?" He nodded. "You're my son. I go where you go." The journey. The next morning, we left early. The road was quiet. The world outside the car window felt unreal, too calm for the storm inside my chest. My father drove in silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was steady, reassuring. He didn't try to fill the air with words. He just stayed beside me, the same way he had stayed beside my mother when she was pregnant with me. The closer we got, the heavier my chest felt. What if they rejected me again? What if they pretended they didn't know who I was? What if they regretted my existence? I didn't know what answer would hurt less. When we reached the neighborhood, I felt my heartbeat rise. Their house was big, respectable, the kind of house that looked quiet from the outside, but could hide decades of unspoken things on the inside. My father parked the car and turned to me. "You don't have to do this," he said gently. I looked at him. "I do." He nodded slowly and opened his door. The first encounter. We walked up the stone pathway. My hands felt cold even in the sunlight. I knocked. The door opened. A woman in her late 50s stood there, elegant, composed, her eyes sharp and observant. The moment she saw me, something in her expression changed. Not recognition exactly, but a flicker of memory. "Can I help you?" she asked. My voice felt small. I'm Omar's son." Her breath caught. For a moment she didn't move, didn't blink, didn't speak. Behind her, a man appeared, perhaps her husband or Omar's brother. He stared at me as if he was looking at a ghost. The woman swallowed. You look like him," she whispered. Her breath cracked, but her expression wasn't joy. It wasn't anger. It was fear. I took a slow breath. "I just want to talk," I said softly. "I'm not here for anything else." The woman hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in." Inside the house. The house smelled like polished wood and old memories. My father followed behind me, calm but alert. We sat in the living room. The woman introduced herself as Omar's mother. The man beside her was his brother. The moment she said mother, I felt something twist painfully inside me. This woman had been my grandmother my entire life, yet she knew about me and never reached out. She sat across from us, hands trembling in her lap. Her first words were ones I did not expect. "You weren't supposed to come here," she whispered. My stomach tightened. "I was never supposed to exist?" I asked softly. Her eyes widened. "No, not that. Never that." She closed her eyes, breathing shakily. "We made mistakes." Her voice cracked in a way that surprised even her. "We made terrible mistakes." My father sat quietly beside me, his presence strong and silent. Omar's brother spoke first. "When we heard she was pregnant, we thought she wasn't right for him. We thought their relationship was moving too fast. We thought she would ruin his life." My heart clenched. "And I?" I asked.
What did you think of me?" He looked down. "We didn't think about you." That hurt more than anything. Not hatred, not rejection, just indifference. His mother took a shaking breath. "When Omar died, we were angry at the world, angry at fate, angry at everything." She paused. "And we took that anger out on the wrong person. My mother. And by extension, me. We didn't help her. We didn't support her. We didn't even check on you." Tears filled her eyes. "It was wrong. All of it. We were grieving, but that is not an excuse." My father finally spoke. "She did everything alone," he said quietly. "Everything." The woman covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We didn't know she found someone. We didn't know you grew up loved. We assumed the worst." Silence filled the room. Painful, raw, honest. The apology. Omar's mother stood slowly and came closer. She sat in the chair opposite mine and looked into my eyes with a trembling vulnerability I did not expect. She wiped her eyes. "I don't have the right to ask for forgiveness, but if I don't say this today, I will regret it for the rest of my life." She wiped her eyes. "I am sorry." She said it quietly, gently, truthfully. "I am sorry we didn't accept your mother. I am sorry we didn't stand by her. I am sorry you grew up thinking we erased you. And I am sorry we lost the chance to know you." Her voice broke completely. "I lost my son, and I lost you too. And that was my fault." I didn't expect to cry, but I did. Not because her apology erased the pain, not because it fixed the past, but because for the first time I realized that they weren't heartless. They were human. Flawed. Broken. Misguided. Fearful. And full of regret. The moment that changed everything. Then something happened I will never forget. She reached for a small box from a drawer. "This belonged to him," she whispered. "He kept it with him every day. He wanted to give it to his child." My breath caught. She opened the box. Inside was a small silver pendant with a simple engraving. "For my child, my forever love." My vision blurred. I touched the pendant gently. It was cold, but it felt like fire in my hands. I could almost feel Omar's presence in that tiny piece of metal. His hopes, his dreams, his love. "He bought it when your mother was 3 months pregnant," she said, voice trembling. "He carried it everywhere. He told me he would give it to his child the day they were born." I closed my eyes, overwhelmed. She pushed the box toward me. "It belongs to you." The goodbye. We spent almost an hour talking. Not arguing, not blaming. Just talking. About Omar. About what he was like. The things he loved. The way he laughed. The things he dreamed. For the first time in my life, I learned who he
truly was beyond a name. When it was time to leave, Omar's mother stood at the door with tears in her eyes. She looked at my father, the man who raised me. "You gave him the life our son wanted to," she whispered. "Thank you." My father nodded politely. She looked at me one last time.
If you ever want to come back, the door will be open. I didn't promise anything, but I nodded softly. That was enough. The ride home. The car ride home was quiet again, but not heavy this time. Calm, soft. After a long while, I spoke. Do you think I made the right choice? My father kept his eyes on the road. I think you made the brave choice, he said, and brave choices are rarely easy. I held the pendant in my hand. It felt warm now. After a moment, I turned to him. You're still my father, I whispered. He smiled gently. I know. You always will be. His smile grew softer. And you, he said, voice warm with emotion, were the best decision I ever made. The final resolution. That night, I sat in my room, the pendant in my hand, the letter on my desk. For the first time since discovering the truth, my heart felt still. Not confused, not angry, not broken. Just still. I understood something deeply. Family isn't one thing. It isn't blood alone. It isn't history alone. It isn't shared names or shared homes. Family is the people who choose you, the people who stand beside you, the people who love you without needing a reason. I have two fathers, one who gave me life, one who gave me love. I have a mother who carried the weight of truth to protect me. I have a father who stepped into a role he never had to take and filled it with quiet, unconditional devotion. And somewhere, I have a family I may learn to know slowly, one small step at a time. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe I will meet them again. Maybe I won't. But I know this. I am not lost. I am not unwanted. I am not incomplete. I am loved. Deeply, fiercely, fully. And the truth, the whole truth, didn't break me. It set me free. My name is Alia, I am 72 years old, and I have finally learned that the most important person I have to love and protect is myself. If you liked my story, you can support me by making a donation so I can write more stories. Thank you in advance. And you, what would you do in this person's place? I would love to hear your opinion, so please share it with me in the comments. I'm always curious about what you all think. And also, write me where you heard this story. For more life stories like this, like the video and subscribe to my channel. There are many other stories waiting for you. With heartfelt greetings, until next time.